Listen, what
Hey,
excuse did Twitter give for banning you?
Well, of course they give none. I mean, Twitter is run as Jack Dorsey's personal political fiefdom these days. They don't give any real answers. They make vague suggestions that you might have been responsible for coordinating harassment. Or this is all a bit of a misnomer. It's a bit misleading. What they're really engaged in is the business of censoring conservatives on their platform and censoring people who don't like their latest favourite feminist projects. I'm just the latest victim of that.
Well, let's start from the very beginning. Were you too nasty, fat and ugly? That's a bit rude.
Oh, who cares? Of course, I was terribly mean, but it shouldn't surprise anybody that a gay columnist is going to be a waspish little thing. I mean, you know, who cares? It's certainly not cause to smear me with allegations that I was somehow responsible for coordinating harassment against a Hollywood movie star. We don't blame Justin Bieber when his fans cut themselves. We don't blame Beyonce fans when her fans go after Taylor Swift. Nor am I responsible, merely by dint of my popularity, for things that the 300 million other people on Twitter say, and it's absurd to suggest that I am. This is instead, really, a campaign to rid the platform of those who have political views that Jack Dorsey, Twitter's CEO, doesn't like. And this is going to worry investors, it should worry customers, it's going to destroy trust in the platform because it demonstrates that he doesn't really have a commitment to maximising shareholder value. He doesn't really have a commitment to making this the free speech platform he always claimed he wanted it to be. Instead, he's using it as a weapon. He's using it as an influential tool in the upcoming US elections. And if you step off reservation ideologically, he will come for you. Interesting thing to note, I'm not the first prominent public person to have been banned from Twitter. More recently, Azealia Banks, the black female rapper, was banned. Why? Well, she'd been pretty mean to a lot of people for a very long time, and the network left her alone until one day she endorsed Donald Trump. 2 weeks later, her account was gone.
No, you're kidding. That's incredible. Talking about the double standards, I mean, I have to wonder whether this is a question of that, because Leslie Jones herself, and I'm putting up a few tweets here, has mocked Orthodox Jews for the curls on the side of their heads. She's tweeted white people, S-H-I-T. I'm not sure what she was meaning there, but anyway, she was saying that two white girls look like a mother, fill in the blank yourself, some mother effer that she once knew. Now, it's not like Leslie Jones doesn't dish it out herself, is it?
No, she can dish it out, but like all progressive liberal feminists, she can't take it. Indeed, she's probably never been called to. I mean, look at her. I know the only thing that I did say, and I did, you know, I made some jokes about how she looks. Well, I'm sorry, she's not an attractive woman. I told the Wall Street Journal she looks very much like one of my ex-boyfriends, in fact. You know, but commenting on somebody's appearance isn't remotely as mean or as I don't know, borderline racist, abusive, whatever you want to call it, as some of the things she said about white people in general. I've certainly said nothing even remotely comparable about black people. This is very clear evidence that there is a grotesque double standard in operation at Twitter. If you are one of the progressive left's protected victim categories, and of course Leslie Jones as a black woman is in one of the most protected categories of all, you can do no wrong. You can say what you want, do what you want, provided you have the right politics and provided you have the right enemies.
Well, excuse me if I do a little discursive little byway into Australian scene, just to illustrate the double standards. And given your own lesson in Twitter ethics, I'd love your professional judgment on whether some other people should be banned from Twitter too. Let me pick on one of thousands of examples I could give here. A TV presenter, Sonia Kruger, last month received a lot of death threats since she said she wanted a ban on Muslim immigration because of the terrorism risk. Now, among the Twitter trolls who incited this kind of hatred of her, so she's fear of her life, was a comedian called Amar Rahman, who called Kruger a proud racist, someone who caused Muslim kids to be attacked at school, no evidence for that, and the beloved of Nazis. Nazis, really? And then he then asked, rhetorically, who would keep Australians safe from this idiotic white nationalist? His words. Milo, if you're banned, why isn't an Amar Rahman banned too?
Because Twitter has double standards. Look, I don't care too much about name-calling. If people want to call each other silly names, whether it's communist or Nazi, I don't care too much. What is remarkable, though, and my day job is technology editor of Breitbart News in the US, and it's sort of my job to keep an eye on these things, and I try to as closely as I can. What's remarkable is how the suspensions, the punishments, the de-verifications all go in one direction. You have a couple of weirdos in Australia I'm familiar with. There's some sort of very damaged girl called Clementine Ford, I think her name is. You know, professional provocateurs, professional mischief makers who can dish out the most appalling abuse and can say the most terrible things about their enemies, about men, about white people, you name it. But they will never be at risk of losing their Twitter account, because this isn't really about abuse or harassment, it's about politics.
But apart from all this, apart from the double standards and apart from the apparent bias of Facebook and Twitter, there's a real serious issue here. Are you scared of the power of these two? And I know they're entitled to it. These are commercial companies, right? It's not like the Post Service or something. But are you scared of the power of these new technologies to disappear people from the public sphere?
Well, there is something a bit Orwellian and sinister about how Facebook and Twitter can sort of unperson you. But in the long term, I'm not too worried. And the reason for that is that all these social networking businesses well, let me put it this way. When I went to the White House to talk to Josh Earnest, the White House, to Obama's spokesman, about the loss of my verification badge in January, Twitter sort of gave me a slap on the wrist by taking my verified badge away before suspending me more recently. What he said, which I found very remarkable, was that the president would be the first person to affirm that the success of these businesses rests on their commitment to First Amendment principles. Now, of course, you can't commit a private enterprise to obeying the First Amendment. What you can remind them, though, is it's simply good business to do so. Once you start sending conservatives the message that they're not welcome on your platform, once you start telling people that if they are too mischievous or too dissident or too bitchy or too mean or too sarcastic or too catty, well, you may as well say goodbye to every gay guy on the network, let me tell you. Once you start sending people those messages, very quickly you're going to find your users abandon you. They lose trust, they lose faith in the platform, the brand starts suffering. All of the most interesting people, and here's an important thing to remember, the creators, the journalists, the comedians, the activists, all the most interesting, fun and intriguing personalities will start to leave. That has already started happening with Twitter, which might be why people that I know who are into, who are big into shorting stocks and all that kind of thing are looking very closely at this company right now and wondering how long it really has left.
No, but Milo, the option of leaving and choosing an alternative only really seriously exists when there is an alternative. What is the alternative to Twitter right now?
Well, you make a good point. The late founder of Reddit, Aaron Swartz, said that there was a sense in which censorship was meaningful outside of government actions when a private corporation has a monopoly on certain kinds of speech, or when it invents entirely new spaces altogether. Twitter's definitely done that, and the reason Twitter worries some people, me included, is that it has a monopoly on the speech of journalists. So it, to a large extent, determines what is covered by the media and how it's covered. In the long term, I'm not too worried, because the platform will obviously die if it refuses to abide by free speech principles. But in the short term, it's a worry. What I think is increasingly going to happen is journalists are going to talk to themselves and start ignoring the public even more than they do already. They're all closing their comment sections. They're all, pretending their readers are abusers and harassers and trolls, when actually the readers are just mocking them and picking up their factual errors and calling them out on their terrible politics. They're going to get more and more introverted. The news business will become more and more irrelevant. And those people with a direct connection to fans, whether that is on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or Snapchat, and you can find me on all of those, not Twitter anymore, those people with a direct connection to their fans are going to become even more powerful than they were before, because they don't have that mediating layer of professional media between them. So in the long term, I'm pretty confident for people like me that life's going to be okay. The people I'm really offended on behalf of, the people that this worries me for, are private citizens who don't have the platform and power that I have, who don't have the platform and power that you have, private citizens who are finding their accounts nuked by Twitter for expressing perfectly respectable, reasonable mainstream opinions. And that's happening every day, and it seems to me with increasing frequency.
Milo, you mentioned the echo chamber of journalism, which is one of the terrible, a lot of people say to me, oh, well, isn't it terrible how journalists write for their boss? I actually think the worst is journalists writing for other journalists. That is the besetting sin of modern journalism. They do, and that gets this echo chamber effect. But here's the problem, of course. Looking at the journalistic reaction to what happened to you, I see very few journalists actually putting up their hand in your defence. And there seems to be like one terrible, vicious piece, I think it was The Guardian or something. There seems to be even a joy at the fact that you're locked out of the debates. This is a terrible indictment of our profession.
Well, I think it is, but it tells you. I mean, look, I've been a media critic. One of my favourite hobbies and part of my job is to call attention to the failings of the media. So it's not surprising that when something like this happens to me, some of the media are quite happy about it. But I did notice in the LA Times, which is probably the most left-leaning newspaper in America, even the LA Times said that this was a bad decision. This was strategically stupid. It was going to... I mean, I'll tell you, when this happened to me, I was at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, and it made me a sensation. I would already have been very popular there, but it made me a sensation. I was the talk of the... So, I mean, sorry, I hate to brag, but, I was the talk of the convention. I could not walk from one end of the media row corridor to the other without being accosted, assailed by fans, by other journalists. I was doing 70, 80 interviews a day. This has turned me into a household name in America. And the fact that I don't have a Twitter account, who cares?
Milo Yiannopoulos, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.